Welcome back to my workshop. Now sometimes it's just nice to make something for the sheer hell of making something. And that's what this project is. It's something I've been thinking about for a while. I don't like to say I've got an inspiration for this project because I don't think too much of designers who say they inspired by this or inspired by that. But it's something that's been in the back of my mind for a while. And if you can imagine a sort of a typical American sort of lunch pail, lunch bag, that sort of thing. We have a little dome top bag. And that's what I'm going to try and make. So I'm going to start off by making myself a pattern. So I've got a little piece of plywood and I've drawn on it the side. This is going to be the side of the bag. So it's 4 inches wide and it's 7 inches high. And then using a compass, I'll just put a dome on the top. So I'll quickly cut that out on the bandsaw and then I'll just sand it, get it as smooth as I can. If you don't have access to a bandsaw or a piece of wood like this, you can make it out of cardboard, but I do it like this and then I've got it for next time. I've got quite a collection of these really, but they're always useful things to have lying around the place. So the next thing we need is a bit of leather. As luck would have it, I've got a lovely piece of black leather here. It's possibly a little bit on the heavy side, but who cares? It would be a nice piece of leather to work for. So having got our piece of leather, what sort of sizes are we going to talk about? Well, first of all, we'll give this a name. We'll call this the lunch pail. And we know we want 2 end pieces, 4 inches by 7 inches. We want a front piece, and the front will come from there to there. Now, how wide do we want it? As I see it, what we're making is a sort of a fairly short squat bag. If we made it the width of this peg, that's probably too much. If we made it the width this way, it's probably a little bit on the narrow side. So what we want is somewhere in between the two. So that's 30 centimetres that way, 20 centimetres that way, so I reckon it's 25 centimetres. Which means, if we look at it like that, it's going to come to there. Time we lose a couple of centimetres for the various seams and things, I think that'll look rather good actually, that's a decent size. So the back, we know is going to be 25 centimetres wide. But it needs to be enough to get from here, we'll do it from here, it needs to be enough to get from here all the way over the top and round to about there. So in order to find that, when in doubt, a bit of string is marvellous. 32 centimetres. We then need a handle. Now I was going to make a briefcase style handle which will fit on the top of the bag between 2 of these. And if our bag is 25 centimetres wide, if you measure your own hand, you'll work out how wide it's going to be. Now to do my hand is probably 10 centimetres. Time we allow for a little bit of wiggle room, we'll call that 12 centimetres. So we've now got a cutting list. All we've got to do now is go around and cut it. So using the strap cutter, I'm going to cut out a 25mm strap. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a handle. This is going to have a briefcase style handle and I'm marking it out with a gel pen. So the first piece is 12 centimetres, the second piece is 22. The numbers will make sense in a moment. That bit we'll put over there and we'll use in a minute. The way that this is going to work is that this piece becomes the top of the handle. So that bends down like that. This piece we'll sew into it like that. Now this is very thick leather. Before I go any further, I'm just going to thin it down a little bit, just to make it a little bit more pliable, a little bit easier to use. And to thin it down, I have this very nice machine here on the back. Now it's called a skiving machine, and really it's a very big thick razor blade with a roller. And what it does, as you can see, that's the bit that's original, and this is the bit that's been skived. And it just thins the leather down a bit, makes it much easier to work. Now for years I never had one of these, and I used to do it all by hand. And I must admit, having now got this, you do wonder how you ever managed before. It was frighteningly expensive, but it does make life a lot easier. So I've ended up with a piece of leather which is much easier to work and is much more pliable, so it will make a better handle. Now this piece, which is going to be the inside of the handle, I'm just going to skive it by hand, and I'm just ever so slightly beveling the ends. And then the way that this works is this bit will bend over like that, that bit then fits in there like that, and we've still got some strength left in the handle. The rings that we've cut will fit there. And you can start to see it's beginning to look a little bit like a handle. Now before we can assemble that, I'm going to quickly run a crease down the end. That just makes it look a bit nice. So I'm going to quickly mark out with a little dot. So on that, we'll stitch mark between these marks here. So to make it easy to do the stitch marking, I'm going to quickly run a line here using this nice new pair of dividers. I hate it when you get new tools. You get so used to working with your old ones, but somebody nicked a pair of my dividers. And I'm using this tool here, which is called a stitch marker. And because this is going to go on the handle, I'm going to do fairly fine stitching on the top of here. So this is a number 8 stitch marker. That means there's going to be 8 stitches to the inch. Now I'm not going to bore you with how to stitch. There's plenty of my other videos that go through it bit by bit. There's also the Heritage Craft project books, and there is one all about how to get started stitching leather. Come back in a few minutes and I will have sewn all the way around this side, and then I'll have started a new piece of thread and we'll go all the way back the other way. So there's our side marked out. Now you can cut this out a couple of ways. You can, if you've got a decent pair of scissors, just cut round with a pair of scissors. But if you've got a saddler's knife and you've practiced, little tiny cuts go nice and slowly, don't rush. So with the two ends cut and that piece there, which is the bottom, you can then start to see the physical size and shape of the bag that we're aiming for. So we'll start, move on to this piece here, which is going to be the lid. The back, the top, the lid, call it what you want. So using the template that we cut out earlier, in fact it's probably easier if I do it here. Using the template that we cut out earlier, we want to take it to the upright position, and then that's the line where we want to put the handle. Well, here's the design question for you. When I first started stitching leather many years ago, I'd get a piece of leather and I'd stitch it into place like that, with square ends, and it does the job. It looks a bit clunky, but it does the job quite nicely. What you could do, if you wanted to, is just round off the ends here. It gives it a little bit more style, but again, it's a bit clunky. What I've done for some briefcases is I cut a slot here and here, and then you have a piece of leather that goes through the slot and then comes through and you stitch it in across there, which is great on a briefcase because you can then put in a panel here which hides all of this sort of stuff. But on something like this you can't do that. Well, you could, but it just wouldn't look very nice. You couldn't put a panel on the inside because it would stop the whole thing bending over, which is what we really want to do. So what I am going to cut is two little pieces of leather about 80mm long, so about there. Sew them into place there. We'll round out the edges, make a little bit of a fancy feature out of them. It's a bit more faff, it's a bit more stitching, but it will look so much nicer. Well, that's the sides all sewn together, so you can now get a clue as to the size of what it is we're trying to make. The next job is we're going to sew the back onto the sides, but before we do, we need to mark out the stitches and get that ready, so we'll do that now. I have these in a whole variety of sizes, just some really very fine ones, which I'll do my very best not to use. Now the question is, how far up the side do we want to come? So we'll put that and we will come to there. And so that we come to the same point both sides. So here we are, we've got the back of the bag sewn on, and you can start to see the kind of shape that we're aiming for. Now the next piece to attach will be this piece here, which will be the front piece, and obviously that's going to go there. But before we do that, we need to put something on here that enables us to sort of fasten the bag. So I've got this little roller buckle which is going to fit somewhere like that. So before we go too much further, we need to make ourselves a strap to take the roller buckle. So I've got now effectively what we're going to do is make a little short belt. We'll make a slot somewhere around there for the keep. We'll skive these bits together and then we'll sew along there, and then that whole piece, when we cut it to about there, we'll then sew onto the front of the bag. Right, so here is our strap ready to be sewn together. The one last little bit that I've done, I've cut a little tiny piece of leather here, which is going to be the keep, and then that sews in like that. So all we've got to do now is I'll sew the two sides as far as the end of here. So we'll sew down that side, which will sew the keep in. So that will then sew onto the front of the bag somewhere like that. And then the whole thing is then ready to be sewn together onto the main part of the bag. So there you are, that's our little strap with the buckle sewn onto the front of what will become the front of the bag. So all we need to do now is attach it to the rest. Now in order to sew this into place, I'll put a few tacks in, and that's, once you line it up ever so carefully, I'll tack those two together and then you can sew it. It's going to take me a little while to get it lined up exactly right, and during which time I shall struggle and probably swear quite a lot. So it's best if you don't see that. You just need to know that that's how it happens. Now with a little bit of struggle, I've got it tacked together here. Now normally on a handbag, when you're attaching the front, you would start at one end and just sort of sew your way all the way around. What I'm going to do on this one, because of the design of the bag, is I'm going to sew along the bottom first and then I'll come up the sides. It's slightly unusual, but it does make it much easier for me. Well, that's all the sides sewn, and it's starting to look like a real bag. You can start to see the shape that I'm aiming for. I rather like that. Now the last job is I'm going to make a little strap to go on the front, which is going to line up with our buckle here. Do remember you can keep up with all the things that I'm making by looking at the blog, the details of which are shown on the bottom of the screen. If you want to get in touch with me, you can also find those details at the bottom of the screen now. I always enjoy hearing from people who watch the videos. You never know, you might even want to buy some of my products. You know. So here we go, that's the last stitch finished. The moment of truth. Well, there you go. I think that's come out rather well. That's a new design for me. That's a rather nice shaped bag. It's a decent size. It feels nice. Now, before we consider it finished, I'm just going to give it a little bit of a coating with this leather polish. This is one that I'll be making for a while. It's just a beeswax polish. So I'll gently give it a covering over the top just to give it a bit of extra protection. But I think we can consider that one a decent job. So thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have a look at some of my other videos. You never know, you might even enjoy those as well. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.